welcome to the latest episode of Southside Stories, the podcast where we talk to leading entrepreneurs, founders in London, especially the south side of the river in particular. And just in case you haven't done this yet, please hit subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and hit the notification button as well. We've got lots of great guests coming up. But with me today is Colin Veitch. Hello, Colin.
Hi, how you doing, Matt?
I'm doing great, thanks.
Good.
Yeah. And I'm really looking forward to this. Colin is an architect from Grid Architects. And I always find the conversations with architects fascinating. And we're going to get into some great stuff in this forthcoming half an hour or so. Colin, tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're based, your job title and your top line on your company.
Yeah, so I'm an architect. I'm a director and founder of a practice called Grid Architects. We're based just off the South Bank between Waterloo and London Bridge. And I'm sitting in my office with a view through to St Paul's Cathedral and Tate Modern. So very lucky in our location. We are a practice who specialise in mixed use and residential buildings, so large scale developments, regeneration schemes, right across the living sector, which I'm sure we'll come on to a little bit later.
We will. Tell me a little bit, why do you think there are so many architects, by the way, in our part of the world? Is it me, or there just seems to be quite a few architectural practices?
There's a few sort of centres where architects kind of seem to congregate for some reason. Used to be Clerkenwell. Bankside is now quite popular. I think it's probably down to lower rents initially. That's why we moved here. Rents have gone up since then, but there's a lot of design consultants around here. So we did have one project where everyone on the project was within 300 yards. So it was great.
Yeah, that's nice when that works out. Tell us about your journey to becoming an architect. Did any particular person inspire you? Or tell us what that looks like.
Yeah, so I always loved design. I used to remember sitting in things like English lessons, doodling, designing planes and cars and trainers and all sorts of things. And I think gradually that kind of idea of design worked its way into buildings. And there was one particular art teacher who set us a project to design a set of Royal Mail stamps and asked us to choose a theme, and she suggested that I should do architecture. I'm not quite sure why, but I realized I just loved drawing buildings and then started designing them. So that was the kickoff from quite an early age. And what's great about an architecture course, it's very vocational. So most of what you learn on the course, you are going to put into practice. And so, yeah, although it's 5, 6, 7 years, I loved every single minute of it. Couldn't wait to be an architect in practice, but loved my university years as well. So yeah, that's been my journey. I love being an architect. I enjoy every single day. I walk into work thinking, great. There's no days where I'm thinking, I want to do something else. So I find it very difficult to think what I might do if I wasn't one. And I find that people love talking about buildings. Everyone's got an opinion on buildings. Yeah. They live in them, they work in them, they visit them. And so although it's kind of, people think architecture might be a bit boring, actually everyone's got an opinion on buildings they love or they hate. So it is fun.
Yeah, I definitely don't think architecture is boring. I think it's absolutely fascinating. How wonderful, by the way, to quite an early age decide that this is what, you had a calling, you decide this is what you want to be. You go and do your university degree in training. You go in and actually do the job, and you still love it. Yeah. All of these years later. Yeah. Fantastic.
I mean, I feel very privileged to be able to having had that journey and to still love it every day. And I think, I've certainly said to my children, find something you really enjoy doing and pursue that. And hope, fingers crossed, that will be something that you can carry on through your career.
Totally. Sometimes it's just bloody hard finding the thing that you are genuinely interested in at a young age. But but well done for that. So tell us, before we get into the current practising Grid, what did the prior years to that look like? Did you work for a couple of different companies?
Yeah. So the last time I did a job interview was in 1997. So my CV is completely out of date. I joined a bigger kind of commercial practice called Hamilton Associates straight out of uni. Started by designing kind of out of town office buildings, and then kind of as urban residential started to take off in the UK, particularly in London, quickly moved on to residential design and worked through Hamilton's for I think 15 or so years. Really enjoyed it there. Was surrounded by really interesting people. It's a practice that grew in size. There's nearly 350, 400 people, I think, when it sort of at its height. And yeah, there was a lot of variety. There's a lot of different strands, a lot of different design philosophies. So it's a really kind of interesting place to work. Lots of different, it's very diverse in many ways. And that made it really interesting. And then in the recession of sort of 2007, 2008, a group of us decided to form Grid. And so we split away from Hamilton's. So there's 3 founding directors, and we took a team of 10 or so with us. So 2009, we started Grid and have built it up since then.
Was reasons for wanting to do that and strike out with your partners, with your own practice? What was the thought processes that led you there?
Yeah, I think it felt like just the right time to be our own separate entity. I think the great thing about Hamilton's was the variety. However, because it was a company that did lots of different things in lots of different ways, I think it was quite confusing for some clients. They didn't really know what they were getting. And so we thought that actually specializing at that point in residential, it was a lot cleaner and a lot easier for our clients to understand our brand, our specialism, if we were our own thing. And I think it just made sense to be a smaller company that was a bit leaner in that recession and can compete in terms of fees and overheads and things rather than a bigger company. So those are the kind of drivers. And I guess also just a desire to do our own thing and see how far we could go.
Brilliant. Well, let's move on to Grid then. So Grid, I think I'm right in saying you do focus on residential. Is that right?
Yeah, we do. I mean, that was definitely how we set up. We started with 2 pure residential projects. But what we find actually is there's rarely a project that is purely only residential. So there's a lot of mixes of other uses in those projects, and some of them can be quite significant. So we've designed 100,000 square foot offices as part of a bigger mixed use development. So we do design other things as well. But generally the developers we work for are moving forwards with residential led developments. And we're kind of more calling it the living sector now because that sort of spans across lots of different things with beds in effectively. So from residential to build to rent to co-living to hotels, student housing, a little bit of later living. So that sort of is the broad spectrum of those kind of residential type projects. And then we do separate projects. We've got some cultural buildings on the drawing board. We've done some standalone office buildings, a little bit of industrial. So, there is a mix of things, but we trade on our brand of being kind of living specialists and for where people live.
And give us a sense, Colin, of the size of Grid right now in terms of number of people.
Yeah, so we're around about 50 people. So we're kind of medium-sized practice. That's, I'm sure with a lot of other practices, our numbers sort of swing depending on the cycle of projects and the economy. But 50 to 60 is our sort of average size. And we like to think we sort of punch above our weight. So we take on projects that are big, that are complicated, that require a lot of people, and we've got the knowledge and the skills and the experience to do that. So although we're medium sized, we're used to doing some very large residential projects.
Let's talk about that then. So 2 things there. Just before we get into a couple of project examples, was there any reason why, any fascination with residential, or was it a commercial reason you wanted to focus there? Or
there's, I think, an underlying sort of desire and understanding that homes are really important. That if you get a good home, if you design a good home for someone, it is the basis for them hopefully being happy in life. And jobs are important, and places of work are important, the schools are important, but actually a home is fundamental to everyone. And I think there's a sort of a philosophical kind of desire to get stuck into that area of architecture. I think also, certainly from my career, I sort of jumped from office to residential very early on and just really liked it. really enjoyed it. Loved the complexity, loved the thinking about how someone might arrive home, how they might use their communal spaces, maybe their private spaces, how they'd use their flats, their balcony, their roof terrace. And so I love putting myself, and we all do actually as a practice, putting ourselves into that person's shoes and thinking about that end user. And I think that is a little bit easier perhaps with residential than other uses, potentially, because you've got that lived experience, you know what it's like. And although there's a variety of different people who live in homes, we all know someone who lives in a home. So, we all know how to do it. We all know what works and what doesn't. But yeah, it's a desire to contribute, I think, as much as anything.
Yeah, plus there's a lot of housing. I mean, from just a social purpose perspective as well, right? There's so much housing pressure in London.
Yeah, I mean, there's a huge need, isn't there? And
yeah,
I think to see yourself as part of the solution is a really great thing. And actually, being part of the construction industry, building buildings that are useful to society, is a really good feel factor. When you work as a team, not just the design team, but the builders and the planners and everyone else. There's a huge number of people who all contribute on that journey, from the kind of blank piece of paper to sort of cutting the ribbon at the end and people moving in. And yeah, that is very, very satisfying to design stuff, see it built, see it occupied.
Colin, perhaps you could give us a couple of examples. What do you think? One or two examples that best encapsulate and demonstrate, what grid brings to a mixed housing or a co-living development?
Yeah, so the kind of from two ends of the scale. So this morning I was at a topping out ceremony. So an event where where the contractor has finished the frame and the brickwork of the building right to the top, and so we gathered together on the roof. It was slightly windy. No one fell off, and we had a sort of ribbon cutting, and a sort of the last bit of brickwork got troweled in, and that was a project for a charity, so a housing association called Women's Pioneer Housing, and that is a project to provide 100 new social rented homes, so 100% affordable housing, only for women. So the charity is set up to provide affordable housing for women. And so that is very, very satisfying. There's a massive social need. Our design sort of really unlocks that site for that charity. It's a 15-story building. It's going to look really good. Got a lot of support from the planners. And it will provide all those homes on a site that currently provides kind of 30 bed sits for the charity. So a huge sort of benefit, I think, to society. So that is one end of the scale, 100% affordable housing, relatively low budget, but really well designed, and working with.
Is that unusual? It sounds like an unusual development.
It's very unusual. It got a little bit of press because it's like women only, and some elements of the press saw that as a kind of negative thing for some reason. But yeah, it is an unusual brief. I mean, we work for some of the big housing associations, so that sort of 100% affordable housing project is not that unusual or very high affordable housing. But yeah, for women only. And it actually had some challenges, well, not challenges, but sort of questions raised about, okay, what would you do differently designing just for women? And we actually did quite a bit of research on the kind of how our standards and guides and regulations are often based around the average person, or even perhaps the average man, not the average woman. And obviously there's a height difference and lots of other differences as well. And so yeah, we did a bit of research for the charity about what might need to change. So things like having slightly lower kitchen units, for instance, was an obvious one. Of course, when we came to specify that, and the contractor tries to buy the kitchens that are lower, it's a non-standard and suddenly
don't exist.
Costs a fortune.
Right. Okay.
So it's very frustrating. But lots of consultation, because the charity is really keen that their 30 existing residents could move in to the housing development. So we spent 5-6 sessions with them, talking them through, showing them the views from sort of computer visualizations of what their view would be like. We marked out a flat in the car park so they could really understand how big the dwellings would be. So that's very, very satisfying, meets a particular need. Perhaps the other end of the scale, so that's in Ealing, other end of the scale in Canary Wharf. So we're on site with a large build-to-rent building, so a 35 and a 50-story tower, and that will provide 738 rental homes in Wood Wharf, so right next to Canary Wharf. Very simple design, really good looking. We keep seeing it in kind of TV shows, so we're all kind of frustrating our partners, pausing and going, look, that's one of our buildings. So that'll be rental projects, so people probably working, living in and around Canary Wharf. So that is the sort of other end of the scale. Very tall building, lots of technical issues in terms of designing at heights, fire regs, wind loading, all sorts of things, but a bigger budget. And that will include retail at ground floor, amenity spaces for the residents, so very grand entrance halls and gyms and things like that. So that's a sort of snapshot of the ends of the scales, I guess. And then lots of other things in between. So lots of large scale master plans, which are perhaps slightly lower in height, but bigger numbers. So we got consent for one in Willesden for the Hill Group, which is, I think, 1650 dwellings. So, large scale, take 10, 15 years to build out, lots of retail space, there's offices, community spaces, etc. And that's, again, a different thing from those sort of standalone buildings. And then do quite a bit of work outside London. So we've got a project on site called Eddington in Cambridge, and that is a lot of individual houses and some flats, so sort of lower scale, lower density, and then some student housing in Southampton that is hopefully going to committee fairly shortly. So, a real variety of work that is meeting all those different needs, and hopefully, good looking, meeting the budgets, meeting the programs to make it happen. Because I think one of the issues that we do have is there's lots of planning permission being granted, but there's not enough of those becoming buildings that get or projects that get built out.
Yeah, I think that's been in the news recently, hasn't it? Which I think we'll come on to in a second in terms of Labour's new policy or attempts to
drive
get things
forward,
moving quicker. Yeah. Before we go there, though, just for those people that don't know, maybe when architects talk about a master plan, what does that mean?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, sorry, threw in a bit of jargon there. So a master plan would be a wider piece of planning and design around a larger area. And so people might be familiar if they visited London, King's Cross master plan or the Wembley master plan. And so that is where, before individual buildings get designed, a series of plots are laid out. And these are sort of effectively little bits of land that would be designated as an office building or a retail centre or a residential building. And routes and parks and open spaces are all planned in from the start. And so it's sort of a wider bit of town planning, effectively, to make sure we get the right ingredients, the right amount of spaces, the right streets and routes and connections to make the place work before individual architects come along and design individual buildings and landscape architects to design parks and streets and things. And that's, again, very satisfying, but take a long time. And we worked on one that didn't come off in the end, but it had a sort of completion date well after I'm going to have retired and probably after I've died. I mean, really long term, 5,000 dwellings that take, 30, 40 years to completely build out. So yeah, some of them are huge, but it's a really important part of the way that cities kind of and towns as well get planned, and it just is a very sensible way of developing rather than individual sort of plots coming forward, it all being a bit of a mismatch.
Yeah, King's Cross, to my eyes, I mean, having sort of been in and around London since the sort of early 90s, everybody can remember what King's Cross used to be like. And it is incredible, actually. I mean, would you say that is a really great example of a successful master plan coming together? To my eyes, as somebody that just visits there, it ticks the boxes.
Yeah, I mean, it is. And we did a walking tour, actually, as a practice. We like to go and visit these things and take everyone and walk around. We went around the Elephant and Castle master plan as well, which again is very impressive. We've been involved in the Wembley master plan for our client Quintain, so all that land around Wembley. And I mean, when we started, we did the first kind of residential plot in 2012, and it was just car parks, retail sheds, and industrial sheds. And I think the transformation into a place that people want to go to, there's lots of activities, lots of events, lots of people living there, is amazing. It's completely changed Wembley's completely changed King's Cross. And I think, that is a really effective way of bringing forward change in a city in a comprehensive, well-planned, well-designed way. There are some criticisms of these master plans about public space and lots of other things, but I think generally it's a really good way of doing it, and a model that often happens in Europe as well, particularly when the local authority is involved.
Well, that's a good segue. I was going to next question: who are your clients? I mean, you talked about the build to rent in Canary Wharf, substantial development. Is that completely private, or is there a borough involved there?
So for that one, that is Canary Wharf Group. So the organisation that built all of Canary Wharf and are now sort of seeing that sort of second generation of transformation of some of those buildings, and they own Wood Wharf, so they are building out that particular master plan. So that's a private company. So similar, Quintain at Wembley. Again, they own that land around Wembley. Did that deal, whatever it was, 12, 15 years ago. And so, again, that is working for a developer, and a developer who's operating the buildings as well, so renting them out. We work for landowners, looking at their assets. We work for housing associations, and we work for charities. Some work for local authorities. So some of that might be master planning, and we helped Wandsworth look at an area of Battersea and looked at what the capacity of some of the sites that were coming forward might be. So a real variety. And then some just sort of individuals who happen to own a site and want to develop it, and aren't really professionals in the construction industry, and gathering a team around them to help them make the most of their particular site or their particular building. And some of that is actually just retrofitting and changing and adapting to give the building a new use, not just sort of knocking down and starting again. So a real variety, and I think that gives a really interesting perspective about, for housing associations, perhaps there's some learning from some of the bigger developers and what they do, but vice versa, some of those developers can learn about how perhaps consultation gets done by a different type of one of our clients. So we like to sort of cross-fertilize and learn lessons on every project for the benefit of our clients, and and the improvement of the built environment, really.
How do you typically win projects?
A lot of repeat business. So you do a good job, you get another job. We're good to work with. We're nice people. I think that helps. We design well. We do a good job. We deliver buildings really well. We know what we're doing. I think all of that helps. And sometimes that is with the same developer. So the next site they take, we'll work on that. And sometimes it's an individual that we've worked with that then moves to a different developer, and they like working with us and will give us a commission from there. Sometimes it's through competitions, so limited invite competitions, where a developer will invite 5 or 6 architects to produce a design and present their experience for a particular site they're looking at. And we're really successful at winning those. I think our win rate is something like 70% of those we win.
Wow.
And we invest a lot. It takes a lot of resources to pull that sort of thing together. But we really enjoy them, and it's a good way to win work. And it's always good beating your competition. So good for you. I mean, 70%. A lot of my clients would kill for a conversion percentage like that. That's, of course, testament to lots of things. I guess great design is one of them. What does good design mean to you? That's a really great question, and probably quite difficult to answer. I think that ultimately it's about problem solving. And I think that's why I enjoy coming to work every day, that kind of designing is just is solving problems. And sometimes they're very multifaceted, sometimes they're very simple, but they cross over through a lot of different kind of themes or spheres, I guess, or skill sets. So it might be an aesthetic problem, how to design an elevation of a building to make it look really great. It might be a technical problem about waterproofing or thermal linings, or something that keeps the building dry and warm. It might be a social problem that needs solving, about how you get people to form communities in buildings, how amenity spaces might work, how people can make connections. It might be a a political question about a policy issue that is set by a local authority, and how we can work within that and present something that can work well. Quite often it is a presentation issue. It's having the right design, but also being able to explain it clearly, answer questions well, sort of be positive about the benefits of it, but also being honest about some of the drawbacks. So, I think there's a lot of that, and it's multifaceted. So often you're also having to do some compromises. So the thing that you want to do for aesthetic reasons might not meet the client's budget, and then you have to find a way of doing it. And that's, I guess, where the skill is, in having all those different layers, making sure it's buildable, it's cost effective, it can be built, it meets the regulations, it meets planning policy, it looks good, it works well, it can be sold or rented out in the future. There's a lot of different layers to it that you're continually trying to improve on. And I think that's the other aspect of design, is very, very rarely do you get it right on day one. That blank piece of paper and the classic kind of scribble on a napkin is generally not how it works. There's a lot of hard work, a lot of reviewing, a lot of sort of iterations of going around in circles. And as architects, we're sort of trained to criticize. Actually, we critique our own work. We walk around critiquing others' work. But in that, we're always trying to make things better. And that's sort of what our process is, our design process is: draw something, make it better, review it, share it with others, get their opinions, show it to the client, get their opinions, do it again, draw it again, draw it again. So there's a lot of effort in, but obviously there's a lot of experience that gets pulled in, and inspiration, because sometimes it is just a light bulb moment, and a sketch unlocks something. So
when I walk around London, of course, living and working here, I mean, living here, as everybody knows, London is incredibly expensive. At the same token, it's like I walk around and I see a lot of empty space. I see a lot of old buildings that have seemingly just haven't been touched for a long time. And of course, you've got a new Labour government who's sort of acutely aware of this and is very vocal around wanting to change some of this, speed up the planning process. Just last week, I think, Angela Rayner was talking about fines for developers who've had planning approval, but the ground has not been struck yet, and there's no visible. What do you think? What's your view of that? I mean, I guess twofold. London specifically. What do you think needs to happen, or would you like to see to improve the pressure on housing? And are you excited by any of the things that Labour is talking about?
Yeah, I mean, taking the second bit first, I think that Labour obviously recognise that this is a kind of national. It's not quite a national emergency, but it's pretty close to it. And councils are spending a huge amount of money on temporary accommodation, and those kind of political decisions of 30, 40 years ago of selling off council housing, is probably a really bad thing for the country, because now we don't have that stock of housing. There's lots of debates around that, but I think essentially we need more affordable housing. And so them recognising that, them starting to push into some policy areas is really good. I think it's always a question of, it's very easy to put out a headline of 1.5 million homes, but we need to see exactly how that's going to be done, and how central government, London Mayor, can make a difference in planning applications and call projects in, and through appeals make judgments that are effectively pro development. Good decision making, good planning, but encouraging development. But there are a lot of bottlenecks. So planning is one bottleneck. Financial viability is another bottleneck. Build costs and construction is another bottleneck. The Building Safety Act post-Grenfell is a very necessary thing, but also currently a bottleneck. And so for a developer, there are a series of very high hurdles to get over to get onto site and put the first spade in the ground. And so there are an awful lot of problems to solve. And it's very difficult to know, what policy levers that Labour can pull to really start that happening. And, the first thing we hear from developers we're working with is they're looking at a site. It looks like it should work for a residential development, and it doesn't stack up for them financially. And so it doesn't happen. And so I think unlocking some of those financial aspects, and that might be financial obligations that the planning consent will determine, possibly affordable housing figures. Because at the moment, if that site doesn't come forward, it doesn't provide any affordable housing. And so it might be that there needs to be a relaxation of that, or some of the other contributions that developers have to make, to even get the ball rolling before you tackle some of the other more sort of technical issues. But partly it will be investment flowing into the country. It'll be the economy more than anything else, because I think if that investment was there into regeneration, into development, then I think we would see more housing get delivered, because it's going to be here for a long time. So it is a good choice.
Yeah. And is there any, do you think there is, maybe that covers it, but do you think there's anything specific for London that you'd like to see as a new initiative or new policy or
I know that the London plan is being reviewed at the moment, and some of the aspects of that, I think the reason why it's being reviewed is a timely thing, and hopefully that will start to unlock a little bit more. I think in terms of actual policies, it's I think what it feels like is that the policymakers need to really listen to the people who are developers and contractors and the people delivering the housing to understand what it is that is required. I think sometimes policy changes are made and it frustrates the industry because it isn't what is required, or actually could even make things harder. And the Building Safety Act is one of those things. It has just made things even harder. And there are very logical things that could be changed in the way that it's set up and administrated and communicated that would allow projects to get consent or approval quicker and get onto site quicker. And at the moment, they're just being delayed for years, and that is not helping.
Yeah. Okay, let's switch topic.
Yeah.
Running the business of architecture. You've alluded to one of these already, but give us maybe some of the challenges. I mean, a part of it, I guess, is it's never a linear, constant level of activity. Does it come in spikes?
Very cyclical, very spiky.
Yeah.
I think traditionally, architectural projects, you started on one date, you carried on with the whole team all the way through to completion, 3 years, 4 years, and you happy days. That's no longer the case. There's lots of stopping, starting, pausing, downscaling, upscaling. And some of that is legislative, and some of that is clients needing to be more cautious. Some of it is just trying to get projects to stack up. And so that means our resourcing is constantly being reviewed on a kind of weekly basis. So you might have a project that is going to pause or stop or get submitted, and then you have to find new work or other work for those 4, 5, 6 people who are currently working on it. And then sometimes you get a client ringing up out of the blue and either saying, we're going to put this project on pause while we reassess things, or on the better days, ringing up and saying, I've got this project, it has to start tomorrow. Have you got 5 people? And I guess the dream is where those align and one project stops and the other project starts. But guess what? I mean, that very rarely happens. So there is a cycle of our size, and we use contract staff that we can sort of turn on and turn off a little bit more. And sometimes we've had to make redundancies, and sometimes we've had to rush in a lot of recruitment, do a lot of recruitment to bring new people in. So managing that workflow, fees, resources, people is really difficult. And you're constantly looking ahead and thinking, well, if all that potential project, if they all come off and the client rings up and says yes to that one, we're going to be in big trouble because we don't have enough people. But if none of them ring, then we're going to halve in size. And it is literally, very, very difficult to predict. I mean, it makes it exciting, but yeah, I did have hair when I started the practice, so that probably tells us something.
Is that got more challenging, or has it always been that way?
It's got much more challenging. I think projects starting and stopping and pausing is much more a reality of life. I mean, construction projects, when they start, they tend to carry on because it's very expensive to stop a contractor. The clients would get penalised for that, so they're good. So we have sort of made a decision in the last few years to try and do more construction work because it gives us that sort of baseline of turnover. But early stage work is fluctuates a lot.
So you're constantly looking at the order book, trying to anticipate timelines,
Yeah.
looking at the level of staffing. That's a constant piece of activity.
It's constant.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's constant activity on a management level. And then the other aspect of it is the individuals concerned, and so, going through redundancy is a horrible process, and, doing that and managing that as well as we can and being honest and open and good in communication. We don't always get it right. And sometimes you have to stand up and apologize to people. Being good and fair and diverse in our recruitment as well is really important to us. But also it's managing people who are in the practice already and might have finished a project but be jumping around and helping out on other things whilst they wait for the next one to start. And so, again, we don't always get that right, but we want people to be on projects that they can get their teeth into, and whether they're leading the project or just working on a small bit, it's really valuable for them to get more ownership and more understanding and more buy-in and more excitement about being part of something through a whole process. And so we like our teams to start right from the start, go through planning, go through all that sort of tender process, work through the technical design and be visiting the site, because we want people to be all-rounders and to have that lovely feeling of turning up and it's finished and it looks great and people are moving in.
Yeah. Do you think it's more precarious? I mean, if you're a younger architect earlier in your career now, how does that look? Is it more precarious or?
I mean, that's a good question. I don't know whether that is true or not. You might need to have someone on who's a younger person to answer, how they feel about it. I mean, I guess, we will always need architects. We will always need engineers. And, you might well ask me about AI in a minute, but at the moment there's the creativity and the complexity of each site being different and each needing a bespoke solution. Does need people with those skills at present, and obviously does need people to put one brick on top of another and look at it and make judgments and things like that. So I think that perhaps, like a lot of things, that people perhaps might be choosing slightly more diverse approach to architecture, might be doing other things as well as, not just a full-time job, but other things as well. And maybe that's something we'll see a bit more in the future. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, let's go on to AI. Yeah, how does that show up in your world? Is it? I mean, I would guess visualization is an obvious area, but are there more deeper things, more fundamental things that AI might shape the future of what you do?
There are. We're taking it very seriously, and we've been using AI, particularly in visualizations, for quite a while. That is very helpful, and some of that is bespoke software, and others it's using inbuilt AI tools in commercial software. And that speeds things up, allows us to focus on perhaps the artistic nature of the image making as well as the sort of the technical nature of it. So that's very useful, very, very helpful. I think also in the early stage design process, we're trialing some software at the moment that looks at different configurations of a building on a site, for instance, and purports to sort of test out 100 options for the time it would take you to sketch out one as a person. So we're trialing that. It's perhaps not quite there yet, and that might help us to present options that we rejected to the client. Say, look, we tested these options out, and this is why we've gone for this one. And then we're also looking at some AI software that helps with the analysis of sites and the context. So it sort of scrapes the internet and makes some sort of decision making about how to present it in terms of lots of things that we would think about when we're appraising a site in terms of its connectivity or the facilities in the local area, the heights of buildings, things like that. And that seems to be quite a successful way of doing it. I think we'll find that AI will creep in. I mean, obviously people are using it in report writing. We not start seeing it more in minute taking and things like that. We do have some clients who are very sensitive about AI and don't want it to be used on their projects. They're worried about confidential information being out there. So again, we have to be careful that we're staying within our limits in terms of those kind of agreements. But I mean, we see it as an opportunity rather than something to fear or put your head in the sand. You've got to try things out. You've got to contribute. You've got to see what can work for you. And I'm sure there's lots and lots of businesses that are taking that approach.
Yeah. Let's return to London just briefly. Your practice is on the South Bank, and it's an area I know well. And my mum was up recently, and we live just east of Tower Bridge. And as you look through Tower Bridge from that side, the profile of the bridge is kind of lost.
Yeah.
Because you got the city, which is just mushroomed. With all the big buildings there now, walkie-talkie and so on. And then on the south side of the river, more where you are, there's some pretty sizable blocks going up. We had one Blackfriars a couple of years ago, and I think there's another big block going
on
up
the other side,
next to it. What's your view of that and the river skyline in particular, and how it's changing so quickly?
It's funny actually. I was near Tower Bridge last week, and I was trying to find the walkie-talkie, and that whenever it was built, was it 5 or 8 years ago, was a big building, and now it's sort of dwarfed by everything around it. And I think in some ways the city is definitely a cluster that reads as a cluster, and there's obviously now, or has been for quite a while, protected corridors to St Paul's, to Tower Bridge from different vantage points, and that does protect those kind of heritage assets. Canary Wharf and Wood Wharf's another cluster. I was thinking perhaps more about Vauxhall, which feels a little bit less planned, less master planned as a sort of piece of townscape. But I think in some ways those are places that have become areas of tall buildings, like Nine Elms. Obviously, things around the Battersea Power Station are kind of kept at a certain level, so you can see the chimneys. I think perhaps what you see a little bit more of that is a bit at odds with that is where you see tall buildings in areas where there's very little clustering, or they're on their own. And I've got kind of mixed feelings about it. I think sometimes those tall buildings can really have a really beneficial effect, and particularly if they're well located and there is densification happening around public transport, things like that. That can be really successful. In other ways, you sort of think, oh, there was a view there originally, and now there isn't. And I don't think cities should stay the same. I don't think they should be museums that nothing can be built. But I guess there's always a balancing act between building big buildings and retaining what's lovely about cities. And I think if everywhere was very, very tall, that wouldn't be great. And so that idea of focusing in particular areas, to me, makes a lot of sense. And then there's areas which are lower, or lots of listed buildings or conservation areas where there is that protection. So you keep that character.
Do you have a favourite building in London?
I did think about this and thinking I can't possibly choose one of our own buildings. That would be not
well, you could.
I do really like the Tate Modern. It is a great building. It's a stone's throw from where we are. The Turbine Hall is an amazing space. And so the experience of it, I think, is great. It's like one of the great cathedrals almost, isn't it, for the modern day. I really actually love the London Eye. It's not really a building, but it is a structure. It moves slowly, which is kind of intriguing. And I really like how it's a sort of that flat sort of sculptural shape. And wherever you are in the city, you can't quite work out which side of it you're seeing because of the curve in the river. And I just think it's a very successful bit of public sculpture, really. Obviously very popular. And we were lucky enough to design 2 buildings that sit directly behind that as part of the sort of South Bank Place development, which again, probably our most high profile buildings. But again, it's all about that setting and Jubilee Gardens, the park and the crowds and the activity. It's just a really good thing for London. So I think that's what I'd plump for.
Those gardens, I walked through there recently. I didn't actually realise they were there. It's a very nice
it's lovely there.
Space there. And the Tate Modern, because around the back of it I find intriguing, because I think it's a Berlin arch. Is it Herzog and
Herzog de Meuron?
That kind of extension that's built there, which somehow it's kind of got modern aspects to it, but blends in very well with the original building. I think that was a very skillful, to my eyes anyway, skillful piece of architecture.
Yeah. I mean, we watched it go up, and it was amazing to see it built. And obviously there was the controversy with the flats that are quite close by, and we were sort of following all of that. But yeah, it's an amazing bit of space as well inside.
Great. Last question for you. And it's a question we always finish off on, which is great career, brilliant projects you're doing at Grid. Who's been a great influence on you professionally in your career?
Yeah, so I thought of two people. One is a client that I worked for on a project, probably way back at the just after the millennium, actually. So a guy called Peter Nesbitt, who worked for Berkeley Homes, who I found very inspirational, very creative, very good at presenting things and presenting ideas to the council. Drove us to really think about how you could take a look at a site and come up with a creative solution. Was really fun to work with. Really a nice person, very innovative, and I really liked that. And I do think about him, when I'm tackling a certain type of problem. I think, I'm sure Peter will have done it this way or thought about it in a different way. But I haven't worked with him for a little while, but yeah, he was good to work with. And then Craig Cashie, actually, who was one of the founding members of Grid, who I worked for a long time in Hamilton's. And I did really enjoy working with Craig. I think that he had that desire to get the best possible solution, and really, when I was working for him, drove me to do that iterative process to keep drawing, to get it better and better and better. And then, when we worked together in Grid, had that same philosophy of setting up the company to work in that way. And I think I kind of really enjoyed that. And I think that as you get older, you start to think, it's a great question about who influenced you when you were younger. And I'm now starting to think, well, who am I influencing as a sort of slightly older person? What am I passing on? Will anyone ever think, oh, that influential person was me? And I think you start to think about those things. And that is another joy of working, actually, is passing on that knowledge, that skill, that experience, and seeing people grow. I mean, it's just delightful seeing people work their way through the company, being able to do more and more. And that's another really great part of the job.
It is. And I'm sure you have people in your company now or in the past who are thinking about you in the same way that you think about Peter. It's always it's a great, it's a mark of a great leader when years down the line you're thinking, oh, what would so-and-so have done in this situation? Or how would they be thinking about something?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Colin, wonderful to spend some time talking about this. Thank you so much for being on. And best of luck with the next projects you're going to be working on.
Thank you. Yeah, absolute pleasure. So thank you for having me on.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks a lot, Colin.
Thanks, Matt. Cheers then.